So, hello, welcome back to another stream, to another episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. Today, we're going to talk about something rather, well, kind of the opposite of simplistic. It is something pretty theoretical. We are going to talk about Lacan and, probably Lacan, but we're also going to talk about cultural studies, and we're also going to talk about Barthes, or however you pronounce him, I actually really do not know, and his theory of myth. Since it is a few things that I need to be able to understand, I do not yet, not fully at least, and so I'm taking my time, and I'm taking your time essentially as well, to go through those concepts that I really believe are very useful in many ways and many aspects of life. And with that being said, I'm going to see you after the intro, as always. And while the intro is doing its thing, I can sort things through rather well. There we go, Barthes, and that is it. I do see the stream being a bit laggy today for whatever reason. I don't really know. I don't think that there is too much in the background, I guess. I'm not sure. But maybe, well, it is some sort of a dropping frames, 27%. So, well, I'll get rid of this one. Maybe I'm able to deal with it rather well now, without having to stop the stream again. Something I do not really want to have to deal with, but I'm seeing a lot of dropping frames, which is not amazing. Let me solve that really quickly. Let me deal with that really quickly. Let's just actually get rid of all of the media playing things that I'm maybe having in the background. Get rid of this. Go away. Get rid of WhatsApp, and I guess this should be fine then, maybe? Yes, it is. Great. So there we go, again. And I can, let's keep it like this. It's not optimal at all, but I think it is fine. Why do the dropping frames now start again? Like, how does this work? Anyway, Barthes' conception of myth. In the article Myth Today from Mythologies by Roland Barthes, however, he discusses myth in many aspects of life, such as myth as a speech, system, language, and many other things. Barthes goes into the deeper meaning of myth, passing on the face value of it and exploring its position in society and life. To put it simply, Barthes' overall opinion is that myth is essentially quote-unquote bad. Barthes believed that language corrupts human understanding of the world. Unfortunately, he also believes that as long as there is language, there will always be myth, therefore stating that myth will corrupt human understanding of the world via language. He explains the concept of meta-language, how one word can come with many definitions and interpretations to someone. This also connects to his theory of second and first order signification. Yes. First order signification is the subjective face value interpretation of a word or object. Second order signification are the many associations created from experiences and also emotions that come with that word or object. Second order signification comes with the signifier, an object, and the signified, the deeper meaning and content of that word. So as far as I do understand it, this is actually part of Lacan's theory as well. So I'm not quite sure, who came up with it first, and who then kind of, dealt with it and used it for his own theory as well. But you're having the word cat, and the word cat means, cat, and it is is it a symbol? No, it's actually quite not. It's symbolizing the cat, so the picture of a cat, the object itself in your mind. So when you think about cat, the word, it means the object, which is actually something pretty interesting and pretty funny. So you're having the, how is it called in English? Let me reread it again. Signification. Second order signification comes with the signifier, an object, and the signified, the deeper meaning and content of that object. So I do assume, I'm not quite sure, but signifier in this sense is the cat itself, so the object, and the signified, the deeper meaning and content of that object is the word cat. In German it is signifikant and signifikat, and well, anyway, never mind. It's actually not important anyway for this podcast. This concept is derived from the Saussure's or Lacan nature of linguistic sign, which stated that lingual sign is arbitrary. Nature of linguistic sign summary. This encourages Barthes belief in a concept of second order signification, and it tries to the pure existence of myth. But this infers that the implied meaning of language is bad. However, if everything is inherently bad, how are humans supposed to communicate in a positive way? How do we talk to each other properly or appropriately? Does this idea make people bad by association with what they say? In order to protect myth's value and maintain its purpose without casting a negative shadow on it, Barthes suggests that we should use parody and exaggeration to expose myth's ridiculous nature. In Myth Today, Barthes suggests using sarcasm and overly political language to explain myth with a satirical, light-hearted approach. This optimistic outlook will lead to a somewhat cleansed, more approachable version of myth that will fit more people's schema, and ideology. Barthes simplifies myth by replacing the never-ending feral meaning that is meta-language and encouraging humankind to implement his method of parody and exaggeration. Cultural reader Roland Barthes and blah 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 blah. So this is something that I've read before. Him using there was an example of a fat man, or let's say overweight man, for the means of being politically a bit more correct. An overweight person, really overweight, one could also say, don't know the word now, really unhealthy. And there was this kind of line, or this one sentence, what he would say to this person, what he would say to this man, this very overweight man, it's not obedient. There is, anyway, this, a word for being unhealthily overweight. There is something for it anyway. So he said to the man, and I'm paraphrasing it because, first of all, it was in German, second of all, I don't remember it fully. Just kind of eat unless you die. Just move on eating the way you do, you're gonna die. Something, sarcastic and something overly, just overdoing things, basically. Suggests using sarcasm and overly political language to explain myth with a satirical, light-hearted approach. This optimistic outlook will lead to a somewhat cleansed, more approachable version of myth that will fit more people's schema and ideology. Well, yes, indeed. Let's actually check out the other article that I have or had in mind going through. Let's do it like this again. And I gotta have a look at my beans. The beans that I'm cooking at the time. Make sure that it's not whatever. So there we go. This article is all about cultural studies, which is a way to see and or analyze many things actually. But I guess they're going to talk about that anyway. Arising from the social turmoil of the 1960s, cultural studies is an academic discipline which combines political economy, communication, sociology, social theory, literary theory, media theory, film studies, cultural anthropology, philosophy, art history, criticism, etc., to study cultural phenomena in various societies. Cultural studies researchers often focus on how a particular phenomenon relates matters of ideology, nationality, ethnicity, social class, and also gender. Discussion on cultural studies have gained currency with the publication of Richard Hogarth's Use of Literacy and Raymond Williams' Culture and Society, and with the establishment of Birmingham Centre for its Contemporary Culture Studies in England in 1968. Since culture is now considered as the source of art and literature, cultural criticism has gained ground, and therefore Raymond Williams' term cultural materialism, Stephen Greenblatt's cultural poetics, and Bakhtin's term cultural prosaic have become significant in the field of cultural studies and cultural criticism. The works of Stuart Hall and Richard Hogarth with the Birmingham Centre later expanded through the writings of David Morley, Tony Bennett, and others. Cultural studies is interested in the process by which power relations organize cultural artifacts, food habits, music, cinema, sports, events, etc. It looks at popular culture and everyday life which had hitherto been dismissed as inferior and unworthy of academic study. Cultural studies approaches, first of all, transcend the confines of a particular discipline such as literary criticism or history. Second, are politically engaged, and third of all, reject the distinction between high and low art or elite and popular culture. Analyze not only the cultural works but also the means of production. In order to understand the changing political circumstances of class, politics and culture in the UK, scholars at the CCCS turns to the work of Antonio Gramsci, who modified classical Marxism in seeing culture as a key instrument of political and social control. In his view, capitalists are not only brute force, police, prison, military to maintain control, but also penetrates the everyday culture of working people. Thus, the key rubric for Gramsci, for cultural studies is that of cultural hegemony. Edgar and Sedgwick point out that the theory of hegemony was pivotal to the development of British cultural studies. It facilitated analysis of the ways in which subaltern groups actively resist and respond to political and economic domination. The approach of Raymond Williams and CCCS was clearly Marxist and post-structuralist, and held subject identities and relationships as textual, constructed out of discourse. Cultural studies believe that we cannot read, quote-unquote, cultural artifacts and only within the aesthetics realm, rather than they must be studied within the social and material perspectives, i.e., novel must be read not only within the generic conventions and history of the novel, but also in terms of the publishing industry and its profit, its reviewers, its academic field of criticism, the politics of awards and the hype of publicity machinery that sells the book. Cultural studies regards to cultural artifacts like the tricolor of Gandhi, as a political sign that is part of the discourse, quote-unquote, of India, as reinforcing certain ideological values and concealing oppressive conditions of patriarchal ideas of the nation, nationalism, and national identity. So in a relay, something that I've read over and over again quite is the fact that cultural studies tries to see as many positions as possible and sees as many viewpoints as possible. And coming up with many different perspectives, as they also pointed out there. When you're reading a book, keep in mind the time and date this book was written around, the author and his history potentially. Then also the other hand, the publishers, the money-making machine that is just in the very background of this whole project of a book. and so on and so forth, like keeping in mind all the different variables, keeping in mind all the different aspects that maybe and probably make this book the book that it now is. And, well, probably also all the other things that that you can analyze with cultural studies. Though we're actually having some books, we're having for Core, we're having Zizek or Zizek, I guess it's pronounced. Anyway, in cultural studies, representation is a key concept and denotes a language in which all objects and relationships get defined, a language related to issues of class, power, and ideology, and situated within the context of discourse, quote unquote. The cultural practice of giving dolls to girls can be read within the patriarchal discourse of femininity, that girls are weaker and delicate and need to be given soft things, and that grooming, care, etc. are feminine duties with which dolls will help them learn. This discourse of femininity is itself related to the discourse of masculinity and the larger context of power relations in culture. Identity for cultural studies is constituted through experience, which involves representation and the consumption of science, the making of meaning from science, and the knowledge of meaning. Cultural studies views everyday life as fragmented, multiple, where meanings are hybridized and contested, i.e. identities that were more or less homogeneous in terms of ethnicities and patterns of consumption are now completely hybrid, especially in the metropolis. With the globalization of urban spaces, local cultures, and linked to global economies, markets, and needs, and hence any study of contemporary culture has to examine the role of a non-local market/money, which requires a post-colonial awareness of the exploitative relationship between the first world and the third world even today. Cultural studies is interested in lifestyle because lifestyle is, 1, about everyday life, second of all, defines identity, and third, influences social relations. Fourth, bestows meaning and value to artifacts in a culture. In India, after economic liberalization, consumption has been seen as a marker of identity. Commodities are signs of identity, and lifestyle and consumption begins before the actual act of shopping. It begins with the consumption of the signs of the commodity. Gotta have to check out my beans really quickly because I think that they are burning. Well, my beans are doing quite fine, and this is great. Mall culture. Mall is a space of display where goods are displayed for maximum visual display in such a fashion that they are attractive enough to instill desire. Spectacle, attention holding, and desire are central elements of shopping experience in a mall, hence mall emerges primarily as a site of gazing and secondary as a site of shopping. The mall presents a spectacle of a fantasy world created by the presence of models and posters, compounded by the experience of being surrounded by attractive men and women, cozy families, and vibrant youth, which altogether entice us to unleash the possibilities of donning a better identity by trying out/consuming global brands and cosmopolitan fashion. The mall invites for participation in the fantasy of future possibilities, thus the spectacle turns into a performance that the consumer imitates and participates in. It is also a theatrical performance that is interactive, in which the spectacle comes alive with the potential consumer, the encircling vistas, long spread balconies, and viewing points at every floor, and to the spectacle by providing a prospect of shopping. Eclecticism is yet another feature of the mall, where the world is under one roof, where a Kalanjali or man mantra share space with shoppers, stop or lifestyle and mantras. Male share space with McDonald's and the multiplexes, imparting a cosmopolitan thus electricism and mixing of products, styles, and traditions are a central feature of the mall and consumer experience. Further, the mall is a hyper-real, aristocratical, secure, postmodern, secular, uniform space of escape that takes the streets of the city into itself in tightly controlled environment where time, weather, season do not matter, where the natural is made through artificial lighting and horticulture and ensuring that this political space resembles the city but offers more security and choice. Media culture. Media studies and its role in the construction of cultural values, circulation of symbolic values, and its production of desire are central to cultural studies today. Cultural studies of the media begins with the assumption that media culture is political and ideological, and it reproduces existing social values, oppressing and inequalities. Media culture clearly reflects the multiple sides of contemporary debates and problems. Media culture helps to reinforce the hegemony of power of specific economic, cultural, and political groups by suggesting ideologies that the audience, if not alert, imbibes. The media culture is also provocative because it sometimes asks us to rethink what we know or believe in. Cultural studies in media culture is studied through an analysis of popular media culture like films, TV, serials, advertisements, etc. As cultural studies believe in the power of the popular culture forms as tools of ideological political power. Cultural studies of popular media culture involves an analysis of the forms of representation such as film, the political ideology of these representations, an examination of the financial sources/sponsors of these representations, propaganda advertisements by Coke after the report on pesticides and Coca-Cola, an examination of the roles played by other objects, people in the propagating ideology, Amir Khan in the Coca-Cola ad after patriotic films like Lagan, Mangal Pandey, and Rang the Basanti or something. Cultural studies also analyzes whether the medium, say film, presents an oppressive why can't I talk today? It is insane. / unequal nature of institutions like family, education, etc., or glorify them, the possible resistance to such oppressive ideologies, the audience's response to such representation, and the economic benefits and the beneficiaries of such representations. Contemporary culture studies of media culture explores what is called media ecologies and the environment of human culture created by the intersection of information and communication technologies, organizational behavior, and human interaction. And with that being said, I'm going to see you the next time. Bye bye and see you soon.